Walk out to your hydrangeas this afternoon and take an honest look at them. The flower heads have faded by now. What was that beautiful blue in June has gone dusty green or antique pink or papery tan. The lower leaves have brown edges and probably some spots. One or two stems are leaning out over the lawn, where they flopped after the last heavy rain and never quite stood back up. And I know exactly what you are thinking, because I have stood in my own yard in the second week of August and thought the very same thing. You are thinking it is time to tidy up, cut those spent blooms off, shape the shrub back into something respectable. Maybe give it one last feeding before the season ends. And that one plant in the wrong spot, the one you have been meaning to deal with for 2 years now, maybe this weekend is finally the weekend to move it. I would like you to hold off on all 4 of those things, not forever. Just a few more weeks. Because right now, in the middle of August, most hydrangeas are doing something you cannot see, and it is the most important thing they will do all year. They are building next June's flowers, not this fall, not next spring. Right now, the buds that will open into those heavy dinner plate blooms you cut for the kitchen table are being formed this month inside the wood standing in front of you. They are microscopic. You would need a hand lens to find one. But they are there tucked into the tips and the leaf joints of the stems you are about to cut off. That is the whole video in one sentence. What you see in June was decided in August. 10 months between the mistake and the consequence. That is why good gardeners repeat this error for years without connecting the two. You do not find out in August. You find out the following June standing in front of a healthy green leafy shrub with not one flower on it, wondering what on earth you did wrong. I have been growing hydrangeas for more than 30 years, mopheads and lacecaps, oakleafs, panicles, the old smooth hydrangeas, and a climbing one that took 11 years to cover a wall. In that time, I have killed a season of bloom in just about every way it can be done. In almost every case, the decision that cost me was made in late summer with good intention. So today, 5 things never to do to a hydrangea after the 1st of August, and more importantly, why. Not rules to memorize, reasons to understand. 2 things before we start. Stay with me for mistake number 2, because that is where perfectly good advice printed on a perfectly good product does real damage, and it is not the manufacturer's fault. And mistake number 5 catches the most conscientious gardeners of all because it feels like finally taking proper care of the plant. And do me one small favor, put your hardiness zone in the comments, just the number. Everything I am about to tell you shifts by 3 to 6 weeks depending on where you live, and I want to give you an answer that fits your yard. Here is where most hydrangea advice goes wrong, and I want to fix it before we go a step further. 6 very different shrubs are sold in this country. Under one word, hydrangea. They do not bloom the same way. Advice that is completely correct for one is completely wrong for another. That is not anybody being dishonest with you. It is a naming problem, and it has cost American gardeners more flowers than every pest and disease combined. So take 20 seconds and work out which one is in your yard. Rounded ball or flat lacy plate, and it was blue, purple, or pink this summer. That is a bigleaf hydrangea. Nikko Blue Endless Summer Bloom struck the Cityline series Twist and Shout. The one from your grandmother's porch. Everything in this video applies to it most urgently. Leaves shaped like oak leaves, big and lobed, turning burgundy in fall, an oakleaf hydrangea. Alice Snow Queen Ruby Slippers Gatsby Pink. Same rules. A cone or pointed cluster that started white and is aging to rose right now. A panicle hydrangea. Limelight Little Lime Bobo Firelight. Vanilla Strawberry Pinky Winky. A big white ball on a floppy stem, a smooth hydrangea. Annabelle Incredible Invincible. Here is why it matters. Bigleaf Oakleaf Mountain and climbing hydrangeas bloom on old wood stems that grew last year. They are setting next year's buds this month. Remove that wood and the flowers go with it. There is no second chance. Panicle and smooth hydrangeas bloom on new wood stems that have not grown yet. They build their buds next spring from scratch. You cannot ruin them with pruning now, and late winter is when you should prune them. Not sure which you have? Describe it in the comments, and I will tell you. That is not a throwaway offer. I answer those. Everything from here is written mainly for the old wood group, and I will say clearly when it applies to all of them. Mistake 1: Cutting deadheading or tidying old wood hydrangeas. I am starting here because this one causes more disappointment than the other 4 combined. By mid-August, a bigleaf hydrangea does not look good. The blooms have gone brown at the edges, the color has drained out. The whole plant has a used-up end-of-the-party look, and it is sitting right beside the front walk where everybody sees it. So the pruners come out, you take off the old flower heads. Since you are out there anyway, you take out the woody-looking stems. Then you even the shape up for fall. 40 minutes and the bed looks 100% better. And the following June, that shrub gives you a beautiful mound of large green leaves and not a single bloom. I call that a green year. The plant is not sick. It is doing exactly what you told it to do. The mechanism is simpler than people make it sound. A bigleaf hydrangea flowers from a bud that is already fully formed and sits on the plant all winter. It does not build that bud in spring. It builds it now while the days are long and the leaves are still working, and it packs those buds into the top few inches of this year's stems and into the joints where the leaves meet the wood. So when you cut 8 inches off the top of that shrub in August, you are not trimming a plant. You are putting next June's flowers in the yard waste bag, every one of them. The brown flower heads are doing a job too. Through winter, that woody old bloom sits above the topmost pair of buds like a small roof, and in an ice storm, it takes the damage instead of the bud. In zones 5 and 6, especially where bigleafs already live at the edge of what they can tolerate, leaving those heads on is worth flowers to you. They also look beautiful in January under an inch of snow, which is not nothing in a month when nothing else in the garden is doing anything at all. So, the rule: on bigleaf, oakleaf mountain, and climbing hydrangeas, put the pruners away until the plant leafs out next spring, not fall, not winter. Spring when you can see which stems produced green leaves and which did not, and cut out only the ones that did not. That is the only time you can prune one of these without guessing. 2 small exceptions. If a stem is truly dead, snaps like a dry pencil, no green, under the bark when you scratch it with a thumbnail, take it out any time. And if a bloom is hanging over a walkway where someone could catch a shoulder on it, snap the head off right at the base of the flower above the first big pair of leaves and leave everything below alone. For panicle and smooth hydrangeas, Limelight Annabelle Bobo. Incredible, you have my blessing to cut blooms whenever you like, because next year's flowers come from wood that has not grown yet. Cut a bundle. Hang it upside down in the garage for 2 weeks, and you will have something for the Thanksgiving table that cost you nothing. One line to carry out of all that: a tidy hydrangea in August is a bare hydrangea in June. Mistake 2: Feeding after midsummer. Walk into any garden center this month, and you will find shelves of good fertilizer made by reputable companies with accurate directions on the bag. Nobody is misleading you. The trouble is that feed every 4 to 6 weeks through the growing season is written for the average plant in the average yard, and a hydrangea in a cold winter state in late August is not average. Nitrogen, the first number on the bag, tells a plant one thing: grow. Make leaves push in May. That is exactly what you want. In late August, it is the opposite, and here is why. New growth has to harden off before winter, thicken its cell walls, drop its water content, and toughen into wood that can survive a freeze. That takes weeks, and it is triggered by cooling nights and shortening days. Feed now, and you get a flush of tender shoots that are still soft and green when the first frost arrives. Those shoots die. Now, the part that costs you flowers rather than just looking untidy: on a bigleaf hydrangea, next year's buds are in the tip. When you force a late flush, the plant pours energy into soft, new tips instead of finishing and hardening the buds it already made. Then frost kills the soft growth back and takes the finished buds with it. You traded real flower buds for a few inches of green that lasted 6 weeks. This is the same mechanism behind what northern gardeners call bud kill. It is why so many people in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and northern New England have a bigleaf that grows beautifully every summer and has bloomed twice in 9 years. Late feeding does not cause bud kill by itself, but it makes it considerably worse. So when do you stop? Do not use a calendar date. Use your frost date, because that is what the plant is using. Stop feeding 6 to 8 weeks before your average first frost. Zones 3, 4, and 5. The upper Midwest northern New England, the high plains frostlands late September into early October, so your last feeding should have been late June or early July. That has passed. Zones 6 and 7. The mid-Atlantic Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, the Carolina Piedmont frost arrives late October into November, so mid-July was the line. Also passed. Zones 8 and 9 have more room, but there is no reason to feed now, and in that heat, you risk burning roots already under stress. If you fed within the last 2 weeks and you are worried, do not panic and do not dig anything out. Water the root zone deeply and slowly over the next 2 or 3 sessions, a real soaking, not a sprinkle. That moves some nitrogen down past the roots. It is not perfect, but it is the only useful thing you can do. And if you want to give the plant something helpful right now, it is not out of a bag at all. 2 to 3 inches of shredded bark or leaf mulch over the root area, kept a hand's width back from the stems. It moderates soil temperature, holds moisture through the last of the heat, and breaks down into exactly what a hydrangea wants. A few dollars and the single most useful thing you can do this month. 2 down, 3 to go. And the last is the one I most want you to hear. If this has been useful, the thing that helps this channel is the subscribe button. Free takes a second, and it means we can keep making the long, specific, unhurried kind of gardening video that does not please algorithms, but does please actual gardeners. That is all I will ask of you today. Mistake 3. Letting them go dry and stopping too soon in fall. You know this plant wants water. A bigleaf in July lies down flat by 2 in the afternoon and stands back up by 7 in the evening, and after a few summers you stop worrying about it. That daily wilt is mostly theater. Wide, thin leaves lose water faster than roots can replace it on a hot afternoon, and the plant recovers on its own. The real problem is the quiet, dry spell 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in August with no meaningful rain, where the soil dries well below the surface and stays that way. That lands at the exact moment the plant is building buds, and buds are expensive. A shrub under real drought stress does the sensible thing: it protects itself and quietly makes fewer of them or smaller ones. It does not tell you, you simply get a thinner show next June and no idea why. There is a second half to this that almost nobody mentions, and for anyone in a cold zone, it may be the most valuable thing in this video. Keep watering into the fall right up until the ground freezes. A hydrangea that goes into winter with dry roots and dry wood loses far more buds to cold. Water in the tissue and in the soil buffers both against temperature swings. Every October, I water my bigleafs deeply once a week if we have had no rain, and I keep going until the hose freezes. That habit has been worth more blooms to me than any product I have ever bought. Now, how to water without wrecking your back. Deep and infrequent beats short, and often every time. You are wetting the soil 8 to 12 inches down, out under the outer edge of the branches, where the roots actually are not against the trunk. A light sprinkle every evening trains roots to live in the top inch of soil, and those are the first to die in a heat wave. The easy way: lay a soaker hose in a loose circle under the mulch and leave it there for the season. Put a mechanical timer on the spigot, the wind-up kind, no batteries, about $15. 30 minutes, once a week walk away, it shuts itself off. No standing, no kneeling, no dragging hose at 7 in the morning. To check whether you need to water at all, push a long screwdriver into the soil near the plant. Slides in 6 inches easily, you are fine. Stops in the first 2 water. You can do that standing up, and it is more accurate than any moisture meter I have owned. This matters most in zones 6 through 8. Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas. But I hear it from Ohio and Pennsylvania every year too. After one dry August nobody thought much about at the time. Mistake 4. Watering over the top or letting the ground stay soggy. Having told you to water, let me tell you the one way not to: do not water the leaves. Overhead sprinklers spraying the foliage with a hose and oscillating head that catches the shrub on its way past all of it leaves a film of water on the leaves at the warmest, most humid time of year, which is precisely what the common hydrangea leaf diseases need. The one you will see now is Cercospora leaf spot. Small, round, brown or purple spots starting on the lowest leaves and working upward. You may also see powdery mildew, a gray-white dusting, where air does not move. Now let me be straight with you because a lot of gardening content is not. Neither of these will kill your hydrangea. Cercospora is cosmetic on an otherwise healthy shrub. It is late in the season. The leaves have already done most of their work for the year, and the plant will be fine. You do not need to buy a fungicide, and you do not need to worry about it tonight. What you should do is free. Water at the base only in the morning, so anything that does get wet dries fast. Rake up the fallen spotted leaves at season's end and bin them rather than compost them. The spores overwinter in that litter and splash back up in spring. And if a shrub is jammed against a fence, make a note to thin it lightly next spring. Moving air is the best fungicide there is. Then, the opposite problem. And this one is serious. Hydrangeas want steady moisture and will not tolerate standing water. Roots need air as much as water. When soil stays saturated 2 or 3 days at a stretch, the air spaces fill the roots suffocate, and root rot sets in. The warning signs are worth knowing because they are counterintuitive. A plant that wilts and does not recover overnight yellowing leaves in the middle of the shrub and sour-smelling soil when you dig near it. Too much water looks almost exactly like too little, and gardeners lose plants every August by answering a drowning shrub with more water. This is a real issue in heavy clay, which covers much of the South, the Midwest, and the Mid-Atlantic. A thunderstorm that drops 2 inches in an hour can leave clay saturated for days. If your hydrangeas sit in a low spot, at the bottom of a slope or under a gutter downspout, that is the problem to solve by raising the planting area so the crown sits 2 or 3 inches above the surrounding grade. But that is fall work, not August work, and in a moment I will tell you why. Mistake 5: trying to fix the plant right now. Here is the one I have been saving. It does not look like carelessness, it looks like finally getting around to it, which is exactly why it catches the most dedicated gardeners on this list. It comes in 2 forms. The first is moving the plant. You have a hydrangea in a spot that has never worked. It gets baked at 2 in the afternoon. It has outgrown the corner. The maple you planted in 1998 has shaded it out. August is warm. You have a free Saturday, and it seems like the sensible time to deal with it. Do not. Moving that shrub means cutting through a large share of its fine feeding roots, the thin ones that do the actual work of pulling water from the soil. In August, heat with a full canopy of big leaves still transpiring hard, the plant now has full-size demand and half-size supply. It goes into emergency mode, drops leaves, shuts down everything non-essential, and the very first non-essential thing on its list is next year's flower buds. Best case, you lose a bloom season. Worst case, in a hot, dry September, you lose the plant. The right window is after the leaves drop, when the demand side is gone, and the soil is still warm enough for roots to knit in roughly October in zones 3 through 5, October into November in zones 6 and 7, November into December, zones 8 and 9. In the coldest zones, early spring before the buds break is equally good and often safer. Either way, the rule is the same. Move it when it has no leaves on it. Mark the new spot now while you can still see where the sun and shade fall. Drive a stake in. Come November, the beds all look the same, and you will not remember what you decided. The second form is trying to change the color. Every August, someone looks at a hydrangea that came home from the nursery blue and has come up muddy pink and goes out for a bag of aluminum sulfate. 3 things first. 1. It only works on bigleaf and mountain hydrangeas. Panicles, smooth hydrangeas, and oakleafs will not change color no matter what you pour on them, and a white variety stays white forever. That is genetics, not chemistry. 2. This is a slow soil change, not a treatment. You are adjusting pH and aluminum availability over months. Nothing applied in August changes a flower that bloomed in June, and it is unlikely to change next June's either. 3. And most important, putting a concentrated soil acidifier on a hot, dry, stressed root system in August is a genuine way to burn roots on a plant that is already working hard. If you want blue next year, start in fall or early spring. Get a soil test through your county extension office first. Most run one for a few dollars, and it tells you exactly where you stand, and make the change gradually. Your extension office is the most underused gardening resource in this country, and your taxes have already paid for it. The theme running through both halves of this mistake is the theme of the whole video. August is not the month for fixing, it is the month for finishing. I am not leaving you with only a list of things to stop doing. Here is what a good August looks like, and it is short on purpose. Water deeply once a week. If you have had no rain at the base in the morning, soak your hose in a wind-up timer. If standing out there is not comfortable, keep going into fall until the ground freezes. Mulch 2 to 3 inches pulled a hand's width back from the stems. If you do one physical task this month, make it this one. Weed the bed once thoroughly. Weeds are drinking the water those buds need. An hour with a garden stool and a hand fork is worth more right now than anything you can buy. Walk the plants once a week and just look. Not to do anything to notice. Which one wilts first in the afternoon? That is your driest spot. Which one gets sun until 5? That is your future move. August is for gathering the information you will act on in October. Cut flowers for the house. This is the part nobody mentions, and it is the reason we grow these at all. Panicle and smooth hydrangeas dry beautifully right now. Cut them when the blooms feel papery rather than soft. Strip the leaves, stand them in an empty vase. They hold their color for a year. There is a bowl of Limelight on my kitchen table that I cut last August. Mark 2 dates on the paper calendar in the kitchen, your first hard frost roughly, and the week after leaf drop when the pruners and the shovel come back out. That is the whole hydrangea year in 2 entries. Watch water, mulch mark, that is August, everything else waits. I will leave you with this. A bigleaf hydrangea planted well will outlive the person who plants it. There are shrubs on Cape Cod and in coastal Maine that went into the ground before the Second World War and are still blooming for the third family to own the house. The one in my back border came from a cutting off my mother's plant, and my mother's came from a neighbor of hers who has been gone 30 years. Nobody remembers her name anymore. We still have her hydrangea. That is what you are really taking care of out there. Not a shrub. A thing that keeps going. So, in the comments, tell me about yours. Where did it come from? Was it here when you bought the house? Did somebody give it to you? Did you dig a piece out of a yard you were leaving and carry it to the one you are in now? I read those, and they are the best part of doing this. And if this saved you a June, send it to one person you know who grows hydrangeas. Do not write a message, just send the link. That is enough. Zone in the comments, and if you are not sure which hydrangea you have, ask, I will answer. I will see you in the next one.